This is what the Washington Commanders need to do in the 2024 NFL Draft. Ryan Wilson, along with Josh Edwards from With the First Pick, here to give you the ultimate mock draft for the team that picks number 2 overall. All right, Josh, let's jump into the old NFL mock draft database simulator. My God, the Chicago Bears took Malik Neighbors first overall. For the sake of laughs and giggles and whatnot, let's choose between Drake or Jaden, because I'm pretty sure, I can't see into the future, but I'm pretty sure that Caleb's going to be gone. So if you want, let's see, if you knew GM Adam Peters, new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, new head coach Dan Quinn, you're having long conversations about these quarterbacks. You can even throw J.J. McCarthy if you want to in there. Who do you want?
I think just looking at the type of quarterback that San Francisco has typically gone for, Drake May is probably more of their prototype. So I would lean in that direction, although Cliff Kingsbury's background makes it a little bit more cloudy. So I could see either one, honestly.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Cliff Kingsbury was with Caleb Williams last year at USC. Cliff Kingsbury coached Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals. Cliff Kingsbury coached Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. And if you had to pick one of these players, Drake or Jaden, more closely aligned with those type players, who are you leaning towards?
Well, based on that, I would say Jaden Daniels. So that's why it's such an interesting decision. And you've got to consider, are they going to take a quarterback, Ryan? Because they've got Marcus Mariota. So, I mean, you could just trade out of this pick.
Imagine a world where Malik Neighbors goes first overall, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jared Verse, because they have wide receivers. They have Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Jahan Dotson. So they have some guys there. That would be truly and utterly crazy. Here's the thing. Ryan Poles, if you take Malik Neighbors, who's a special player, first overall, you just don't unpack your bags because they're going to ask you to leave shortly thereafter. All right, I lean towards Jaden. My vote's for Jaden. How do you feel about Jaden, second overall?
That's fine. Yeah, works for me.
All right, Jaden it is, and they pick again at 36, and they have a ton of picks in the first 100 selections, in part because they traded their edge rushers right before the trade deadline last year, and now at pick 36. I mentioned they do have some wide receivers, but if there's one here you like, perhaps you think about it. Ooh, boy, Johnny Newton's sitting there. Of course, they have Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, two of the best players in the league. A.D. Mitchell sitting there. Keon Coleman sitting there. So what's the next area of need for you? Because they've done a ton in free agency. They have, you mentioned Marcus Mariota, but they did get Austin Eckler. Zach Ertz provides some depth at tight end. He's not a long-term answer there. Dorrance Armstrong out of Dallas provides some edge depth as well. Frankie Louvu, I think, is an underrated signing that plays linebacker. And then they added some depth in the secondary. Michael Davis is currently penciled in as a starter, but if you have a cornerback here you like, I think you go in that direction, even though Emmanuel Forbes was a first-round pick last year. And they still have they signed Noah Igbenogany, the former first-round pick, who is not quite lived up to expectations yet. So any number of directions we can go here, Josh.
Yeah, I think the three positions that I would look at first for Washington would be offensive tackle, cornerback, edge rusher, really, some of the most premier positions in the NFL. They have some needs to fill in those spots because of the changes that they've made over the past calendar year, getting rid of Montez Sweat and Chase Young. So they've got some clear needs on this roster. I think they have to be self-aware with what their situation is, because they're probably not going to turn it around in a year. So I think you do have to consider best player available too. So I did notice Kingsley Suamataia was there. I think he's going to go a little bit earlier. So that would be an intriguing option for me personally.
Yeah, I think you were a little higher on him than I am. He played right tackle in 2022. I think he played a little more left tackle last year. I don't love him as much as other people, but I have no issue with taking him here because you do need depth. They did help the interior offensive line through free agency. Andrew Wiley's the right tackle right now. Braden Daniels is a left tackle, so there's certainly room for competition there. All right, hit the button on that, Producer Harry, and then we'll move on to pick 40, 4 picks later. I mean, we're cooking here. So you have Jaden Daniels. You got him some offensive line help. Johnny Newton's still sitting there. You don't need a Johnny Newton, but my goodness, he looks pretty good there. Tyler Nubin is sitting there. You have Percy Butler and Derek Forrest. You signed Jeremy Chin, as I mentioned. Jeremy Chin's more of a closer to the line of scrimmage guy. I love Tyler Nubin, but I don't know how big of a need you think that is right now. They lost Cameron Curl.
It wouldn't be They did lose Cameron Curl, so it's certainly one of the positions that they need to fill. I also wonder if defensive tackle is a position that they consider just because it gives them the flexibility to do something with a Jonathan Allen or Daron Payne at the trade deadline. So,
Yeah.
um, have to think in that direction too, because I think they are a bit of an organization in flux. So I wouldn't rule out Johnny Newton or one of those defensive tackles, but I'll leave the choice to you because I think there's some good players still available.
All right, hit the all button, producer Harry, and let's see. Because I think this team is a little closer to competing than maybe you do, it sounds like, Josh, because they've just done so much. And again, when you sign a bunch of not high upside, but guys who have been really good players who are on the downside of their careers, a better way to put it, that could go any number of directions. So you have Terry McLaurin, you have De'Ami Brown, you have Jahan Dotson. Is Keon Coleman, is that too much?
No, I think it would. I think it would pair well with the skill sets that they already have on the roster. I think looking at value too, that's a good choice.
Okay, I don't hate that. Let's see what's at the tight end position because I might get crazy here. They have Zach Ertz and John Bates, Cole Turner, Utah State, of course. So Jatavian Sanders still there. Like I'm a big Ben Sinnott guy, but it looks like the way that the mock draft simulator has him, he'll be around. All right, I think I'm going to take Keon Coleman. 3 straight offensive players. At 67, I think he's a top 35 guy. All right, another weapon for Jaden Daniels. We'll see if he can
But I
beat
think
Marcus.
that's smart roster building as well because you do have a rookie quarterback. So you want to do everything within your power to fill the offensive side of the ball to give him a chance at success his rookie season. And I'm with you on tight end. I think that's a position we probably should target here soon.
All right, so here we are back on the clock, pick 67. I don't think we need a running back at Austin Eckler, Brian Johnson Jr., even though Jonathan Brooks is sitting there. He's coming off the ACL. Patrick Paul's sitting there as a depth at offensive tackle. We just got that with Kingsley Sumataya. What are you thinking here?
That's tough. Mason Smith gives him a little flexibility again on the interior. Those offensive tackles are pretty intriguing as well because is Andrew Wiley your long term answer at right tackle? We talked about the tight end, so there's a number of different directions that you could go with this choice.
Here, hit the cornerback button just for giggles here. I like Chris Abrams-Drain. He's a little undersized. Cam Hart's a long cornerback, more in the sort of Michael Davis, Manuel Forbes in terms of length. Quan Martin. I wouldn't take Cam this high, I don't think. I know some folks are higher than I am. All right, let's try the tight end button. As long as we're just going all offense here. Kate Stover, Theo. I like Theo Johnson. I like Ben Sinnott. It looks like this guy's going to be around, so I won't force that. And hit the offensive tackle button as long as we're adding depth. Patrick Paul, Amagaji out of Yale is a developmental player with huge upside. Blake Fisher's the right tackle out of Notre Dame who hasn't quite lived up to expectations. Roger Rosegarden, I wouldn't take him this high either. All right, Josh, I'm going to push the ball back in your court.
Let's go with Chris Abrams-Drain.
Oh,
we got a lot of picks here, so we can probably still get some of those players that we're talking about.
I like it. He's a physical corner. The knock on the issue is that the knock on Manny Sanders is that he weighed, or excuse me, Manuel Forbes that he weighed 166, and he was sort of manhandled at the time. Abrams-Drain plays with an edge, which I appreciate. Now, listen, they have Bobby Wagner. After that, they don't have a whole bunch. If you're talking about a Junior Colson, for example, if you want to bolster the middle of the linebacker group, they do have Jamin Davis, who's the weak side guy, and that's maybe where Junior lines up. Jeremiah Trotter's still there. He's not the athlete that Junior Colson is, but he's more of a thumper, if you want to call him that. And hit the all button, please, producer Harry. So Patrick Paul's still there. Devontae Walker, it's a little high for me for Tez Walker. Javon Bullard, I like as a nick. Their nickelback is Quan Martin, so you don't really need depth there. What are you thinking?
I kind of like the thought of taking a Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and pairing him with Jamin Davis because I do think they have complementary skill sets. Davis, I thought, played a little bit better in 2023 than what we had seen his freshman season or his rookie season. So that could be an option that we go here. I love Javon Bullard too, so lots of good options.
All right, let's go with Jeremiah Trotter, and then at 100, we'll circle back and see who our tight ends are. Because the way this board was falling, there might be some value at the tight end position, unless all my guys are gone. So Jaheim Bell's still there. I wanted to see a little bit more from him, not athletically, just in terms of consistency. Dallin Holker, I like a lot. Tip Riemann, I like a lot. But now I'm wondering if we're too rich for these guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I thought one of those guys we discussed earlier would be available. Because they're not, I'm leaning in a different direction at
All
this
right,
point.
let's see what we got there. So Javon Buller's still there. That almost feels like a layup. Jonah Ellis is
Jonah
still there,
Ellis.
who I like as an edge rusher. I think edge, even though you signed some guys, including Cleve Farrell and Dante Fowler Jr., that doesn't necessarily mean those guys are going to each get 10 sacks. More likely they get
Right.
closer to 3 to 5 sacks, and that feels pretty optimistic. You want to go Jonah Ellis?
Yeah, works
I
for
like
me.
Jonah Ellis. Huge upside guy, good athlete. Next up, we have 3 more picks here, 139. All right, who's at the top here? So said Gray, we're good because we just took Marshawn Lloyd could have depth if we're looking for running back depth. Michael Pratt's still on the board. Dwayne Carter. Did we get a defensive tackle earlier?
No, we discussed it. We did not take one.
Oh, Mason McCormick's a value there in terms of interior offensive line as well. So I'll throw it back at you. My Dwayne Carter, the defensive line from Duke, who I think gets drafted before this. Mason McCormick, the interior offensive lineman, from South Dakota State, who I think gets drafted before this. So some value along the interior lines on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I like both of those options. I like Rosengarten, and right below that was your guy Christian Jones as well. I say we take Dwayne Carter now because there are a couple tackles, and maybe we circle back at 152 and get one of them.
Yeah, let's get Dwayne Carter to add some depth there, to your point. And we know that Washington likes to move and shake at the trade deadline. And if that's what they want to do with some of their higher priced veterans along the interior defensive line, so be it. Well, Mason McCormick's still there. And look, this isn't a huge glaring need. You signed Nick Allegretti, who was a backup in Kansas City, had to start towards the end of the season because of injury. So maybe he doesn't win the job outright. Tyler Biadasz feels like he's going to be the starter. Michael Dieter's behind him, who they also signed. And then Sam Cosme at the right guard position is probably going to be the starter. That feels as close to set in stone as you want. But there's also Christian Jones there if you want to get depth at the offensive tackle position. So I'll let you go whichever direction you feel best about.
Let's go with your guy Christian Jones.
Sold. I mean, we're just adding players around the franchise quarterback. It just makes too much sense. All right, let's see what kind of tight end we have here. And then we'll go with best available player if there's no one there. I like Holker as more receiver. I think Tip Ryman, no one's talking about him a lot. Of course, producer Harry fooled me. I thought we were all my guys went. AJ Barner's still there, which I like him as a big sort of target. He's not an incredible athlete. And then some athletes out of Washington and Culp and Westover. Hit the all button real quick, Harry. Let's see what we got. We don't need a center. Say Davidson running back, Eric All. Christian Boyd adds even more depth along the defensive line. What do you think here, Josh?
I say we take one of those tight ends, whichever one is your preference, and round out the draft.
All right, let's do AJ Barner here. Round it out. All right, we'll see how Commanders fans feel about this because they may not be as sexy as they want, but I love Jaden Daniels. I do too. I love the offensive tackles we got there. Keon Coleman is an immediate contributor, even if he doesn't have to start, which is great. You have Jeremiah Trotter. You can line up next to Jamin Davis, as you point out. It's a pretty solid group. This group, I think I'm a little higher on them than you are as a team. I think they have a chance to win 9 games. Does that seem reasonable?
In that division, it'll be tough, but certainly doable because I do think if you get the play out of the quarterback position that you think you may get, then it's certainly attainable.
Yeah, and it all comes down to how whoever the quarterback is. Jaden Daniels, fingers crossed. Marcus Mariota, worst case scenario, works out. All right, that wraps up the Perfect Commanders Draft class. Make sure to subscribe to NFL on CBS on YouTube. Download with the First Pick Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and stay tuned for more Ultimate Mock Drafts because we're hitting all 32 teams.